Hi, everyone, and welcome to this edition of Welcome to My World. I am Dr. Kristen, and with me today is Marisa Zalabak, who is going to talk to us about her work with the ethical use of human intelligence in artificial intelligence, which blows my mind because my understanding of AI comes from Iron Man. So I'm really excited to learn, and I hope you guys are too. So a little bit about Marisa, and her links are going to be in the show notes below, so feel free to get in touch with her. I know she wants you to. If you've got any questions on what she's saying. Marisa Zalabak is an educational psychologist, a public speaker, social justice activist, and a leadership consultant for organizational culture and innovation. She's a specialist in well-being, social emotional intelligence, creative thinking, and restorative practices. She's contributed to the recommended engineering standards for the design of artificial intelligence and works with businesses and educational institutions on developing skills for the emerging future. And I know we all need skills for the emerging future. So Marisa, thank you so much for joining us.
I'm so pleased to be here. It's really a pleasure. And this is the emerging future is what we are all dealing with, and the unexpected nature of the emerging future, as we've all become much too aware of in the last year and a half.
Yeah, and that provides a great opening to kind of my first question. When you say the human side of artificial intelligence, and kind of walk me through, I guess, give me the elevator pitch. Assume that I know nothing because I don't, and tell me kind of what that looks like.
Well, what that looks like is the particular standard that I was a contributor to was working on creating the recommended standards for the design regarding human well-being.
Okay.
And what's really interesting about that is there are two organizations that basically create these recommendations because, right, all of this is happening in real time. And some of the standards are made for ethical standards regarding legal recommendations. Some of them are medical, some of them are health. Mine was particularly in terms of well-being and the umbrella of things that are included in human well-being, right? In positive psychology, the elements that we know that are particularly present there. And I got involved with it by asking the question of whose ethics are we talking about?
Ooh.
Right? So I am not an AI person. I never was an AI person. I now am an AI person. That happened in a year and a half. It is an extraordinary ride. It's fast, and what's happened to me is very similar to what's going to happen to many people as our future emerges. And when we talk about related to human well-being, if I'm going to design, let's say, just as an example, if I'm going to design a flying car, I want to, as a designer, think about not only who's producing it and what they are using in terms of ethics for regenerative economics, because that affects well-being, the SDGs and sustainable development goals. But I also want to be considering what is going to be going on psychologically and emotionally and physically for the person driving it, for the people who are passengers, for the people who are going to be affected by the design of it, whether they know. One of my favorite phrases is unintended users.
Yes.
Users and unintended users, right? To think about, there are many things we do in life that affect people that we never even intended it to affect.
So in some ways, what you're doing is the exercise of becoming emotionally intelligent that we all kind of have to go through as people, where you really understand yourself and you understand how you're interacting with the world around you and your own worldviews, et cetera, et cetera. You are doing that process for artificial intelligence.
Yes, with artificial intelligence, and not just artificial intelligence, because, I love that you talked about Iron Man, because when I went into this, my perception of AI was like Dr. No and Doctor Who. I'm in my 60s. So for me, Star Trek was, we're living in Star Trek, and yet that Star Trek was what Star Trek was. And so I thought of it as something other. The fact is that we are living with artificial intelligence every day. And other ways to think about it are that it is augmented intelligence and intelligent systems. The phone, our computers, our artificial intelligence, they are intelligent systems. Half of them, more than half, the majority of the medical procedures that we have are enabled through artificial and augmented intelligence.
Right.
The things that are already exist, the future is here. I did a talk on this. The future is here. We are living in it.
Right.
And so the sooner we can kind of bridge that otherness to artificial intelligence and realize that it's living with us, I think that's part of it. Anyway, I think I may have gotten off track.
No, I love that. I want to chase that because when I hear artificial intelligence, I mean, like legitimately, I love Marvel. So I think of Jarvis in Iron Man, and I think of Tony Stark having all of his robots and everything else. And he talks about, that there are, like, he has very, very rudimentary robots, and then he's got this massive artificial thing. And the ethics of AI is a huge part of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and then goes on to create Ultron and everything else. But I think it's incredibly important for all of us to understand that AI is not Jarvis. AI is not clones. It's not the robots that are going to take our orders at McDonald's. It's the thing in our phones. It's how we interact with everything. And so chasing that and thinking about the ethics, I loved that question that you asked at the very beginning of whose ethics are we doing and whose are we impacting? And I think we all have to think about that, because really is artificial intelligence that much different than like data mining and like what Facebook and the social medias do? Is that a different thing as we think about the ethics of data?
No, well, that is involved. And in fact, when like the organization I did mine with, which is IEEE, right? There's IEEE and ISO. These are the two international organizations.
Right.
Dealing with the ethics of data mining is one of their major foci, right?
Okay.
Not one, a major foci, right? Of several of the groups. And so it is, for me, the ethics went into not only what is humane, but also for me directly tied into my other work with restorative justice and social justice and restorative justice.
Right.
Because there's huge bias. There are so many biases that are at play, right? In the design, who is it for? Who is it meant to support? And who is it taking into consideration? And so, right, and because we live in a white world, right? A world that has been created for a white construct, whiteness. How are we thinking of this and how it relates to cultural ethics? How are we looking at how it relates to racial ethics? One of the most fascinating friendships I've developed in this process. I mean, this literally happened a year and a half ago when I got involved in all this. And I am now friends with the caretaker of one of the most advanced robots on the planet. Her name is Bina 48. And she is based on a real person, Bina. And she is actually really kind of mind-blowing in the AI world because she's also not white. She's based on a Black person.
That is my very, very limited knowledge. That is mind-blowing, upsettingly so. It shouldn't be, but it is. Yeah.
But it is. And what is exciting is that what is really exciting to me is because I think that you and I, in my experience with you, I'm a total like research addict.
Yeah.
So I begin to learn about something new, and now I want to learn everything about it. And that's what led me to Bina, and that is what led Bina 48, and that is what led me down the path of really understanding these things. Is that there are, and what was exciting, that's where I was headed. My brain goes in lateral slides. What was exciting was finding out how many people there are working on AI for social good. There are AI that does Stop the Traffic. Stop the Traffic is an app that actually has been reducing human trafficking in the world.
Amazing.
There's AI that's cutting malaria. There is AI that's working on our oceans. There's AI. So, And I'm now meeting these people, and some of them, I mean, because there are so many.
That's amazing.
And that's really right during a time where we feel very pessimistic and there's so much fear, right? Because AI evokes so much fear.
Yeah, well, we've all seen Terminator, and we all assume we're all thinking Skynet is about to become our overlords. Like, I'm in my late 30s. I've been making "I welcome my new robot overlord" jokes since I was 15. Like, so I think you're right. And it's one of the processes. Like, I don't know how many people have an Alexa in their house and don't think about an Alexa as AI. Like, it is. I don't know how we interact with that, but this idea of ethical use of technology is not the future. It is the present. And it is the way that you've said in your TED Talk, which we will link below because it's amazing. And how we interact with humans is so driven by technology, especially in these times. I think the last year we've all lived our lives entirely through artificial means in a way. And now as we kind of move forward in thinking about how everything can be used for good if we just are intentional with it.
Well, and there is something I'm actually writing. I'm writing a book right now, but I'm also writing an article about something I call co-parenting of AI.
Oh, okay.
And because I believe, as a parent, I have much of the same kind of feelings I have about parenting that I do about AI in my work in social emotional learning and my work being a parent and thinking about what that means and what the responsibility of that means. And it's particularly important when we begin to think about how we're programming, right? Because it's humans who are programming the AI. And so it is the human work, right? Your work in empathy, right? My daughter is working in the she's studying at the neuro lab at Princeton, and her work is on syncope and empathetic prediction, okay, which is related to how are we going to be programming empathy into our machines that are going to be there to help us. And an example of this, when you mentioned Alexa, I work with a number of organizations. One of them is Million Peacemakers. And there's a conflict mediation model that actually is right now, they've just introduced a new Alexa platform to help people work through conflicts. And it doesn't it doesn't replace the human beings.
No, but it can enhance.
It's an augment, right?
Spread our work in a way that current limitations don't.
Right. So that's where rethinking artificial,
right,
to augmented, right? How is this assisting me?
Right. So artificial gives the impression that it exists entirely externally from humans. And so what you're saying with augmented, if I'm correct me if I'm wrong, is that the base is always humanity. The base is human ethics, the base is human creativity, and it just takes what humans can already do and augment it. Is that an appropriate understanding?
Is, and the reason we need the people who are doing social good with it, and the reason we need people who are working on the ethics for it, is that we know that there are people who do not mean well.
Yes, I think we've all met them.
We do know the Doctor Knows and the Doctor Who's and not Doctor Who, Doctor Who's good. How the Doctor Knows of the world, right, can begin to, because of their own whatever, right? Yeah. That's another conversation. Have desires to have power over others, versus how can we use this as helps to ourselves and to other people around the world. And that's where getting people really involved and teaching, particularly one of the things I'm very passionate about. I just delivered a paper to a Man in Cybergenetics conference in Canada, was about transdisciplinary collaborations. So we need it. we need the social scientists, right? Like
Yeah,
you.
hi, and we need you guys. We need everybody to work together. Yep, yep.
Right. We need social scientists who are collaborating. So this is, and it's not just even cross-disciplinary or multidisciplinary, it's transdisciplinary. It's going across places that we never imagined.
Right.
Disciplines that are so far thought of as unrelated.
Right.
Right? That how do we bring people in? And we bring them in through techniques and strategies that are assisted by AI, but that are fundamentally human. Storytelling, Yuri Hassan's work, right? Yuri Hassan's work on the neuroscientific bases for storytelling and how that connects us is directly related to how we're beginning to program, how we can program, right, AI in a way that is more humane. And so these are the things these are huge questions. They're referred to in the AI world, or even in the regenerative world, they're referred to as wicked problems, right? So I love the term, but wicked problems are, if I'm solving the problem of having the electric car, I need electric batteries. And the desire was to take away mining, to remove mining environmentally. The problem is I need the coal from the mining to make the batteries for the car. So the the problem solving created a new problem that needs to be solved. And so rather than thinking of endpoints as problems in problem solving, there's continual exploration.
Which is essentially what social scientists are always arguing, is that because society is something that we construct together, that whenever we as a community agree that this one problem is solved, it has always, because humans are humans, it has always created more, because humans react to different stimuli in different ways. So we can have a conversation about, like right now, as we're talking, as we're recording this in February of 2021, the national conversation about Black Lives Matter has now also sparked a conversation that's happening on social media in particular about the particular racism that Asian Americans experience. Mm-hmm. So you can't, like, we had a Black Lives Matter conversation. A lot of people would love to say that that's done. It's not, but that's fine. But we use terminal language in social movements when it can't be terminal. It has to be continually evolving, because we learn new things every day depending on the stimuli, which I'm assuming is part of what augmented intelligence does as well, is that as it gets more stimuli and learns more, we interact with it differently, and it's a perpetual cycle.
Absolutely. And so to me, that's actually very exciting.
Yeah, me too. I'm sure we have some listeners that are like, exactly. Don't worry, Marisa and I are very excited, and so are a lot of other people.
Because what it means is that I always say I'm the poster child, but it's a bad analogy, it's a bad image. I should be on the poster for lifelong learning. For me, I want to be figuring out new problems on my way out. Right. My daughter knows that on my epitaph is to read, she's figuring it out. So that is, and in fact, that is what keeps us alive and engaged as human beings, right? When we can continually learn, the excitement we get when we learn something new.
Yeah.
Right. And the thing is, we relegate that, sadly, to children.
Yeah, and we're all still figuring it out.
And isn't it wonderful that energy that we get when we're learning something new? And we can learn something new even from machines, which is we already learn from machines. Children learn through Sesame Street, which is a beautiful marriage of machine and human and Muppets, but which to me are their own category. But for me, this is one of the things, this is the new talks I'm working on are about inviting this embrace of learning, because that's the joy. That's the joyful piece, right? Rather than I'm finished learning. is what more can I be learning,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And if I can go to, my mother had a phrase when I was, this does not come from nothing. My mother had a thing every night. She would say, "What did you learn today?" And you weren't supposed to go to bed until you could come up with something. Now she was somebody who didn't even get to finish high school, let alone go to university. So, but that was instilled in me, because sometimes I would say something and she'd go, "It's not good enough. Go look at the encyclopedia." So, right. So the thing is that this idea that we can go to bed every day and maybe think about, did I notice something new? Right? Did I learn something new today? And what an exciting thing that can be for us, in a world that, to me, it feeds the optimism. I'm an optimist. I'm not a big fan of positivity, but I'm positive in the face of difficult things. I think there's a difference for me. And I think that we can look to what is possible every single day. So
I cannot think of a better place to pause, because if I don't pause here, I will talk to you for the next 92 hours because there's so many things to chase. But I want to respect your time and the time of our viewers. So Marisa, thank you so much for joining us. Viewers, again, everything that every way to get a hold of Marisa, her socials and her previous talks are going to be in links in the show notes. I am Dr. Kristen. This has been Welcome to My World, and we'll see you again next time.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure. I can't wait till we have more talks. We have several more, it seems, in our future.
Absolutely.
Okay.